So let's go ahead and create the rule here. First, we need to provide the rule name. Let's call it as generate username. Generate a unique username for the account, the endpoint application. So before we create the data elements, first we'll go ahead and create the custom function, add custom function. Name it is unique, and you see the return type is string, so it is going to return a boolean, not the string. So let's change that. So whether the unique account exists or not, so it is going to return true or false, so change the return type to boolean. And then parameters, we will need the username, which is generated in our main rule, so that is passed to this function. So let's name our username as the parameter. So let's create the data elements in the function. So for the account exists by display name, we will need two parameters for that sale point object method. One will be the application name and another is the username. So within the application, it is going to check for that username if the account exists with that username. So first let's get the application name, get app name, and that will be a string. And source type, it will be an object, sale point object, application. Method will be get name, and let's add that. Then we will add one data element for account exist. This will return a boolean. Again, this is a sale point object of IDN, and method will be account exist by display name, where we will provide the parameter as the application name and display name is our function parameter username, and click add. As you can see, there is a data element preview here, and you can also see the complete custom function preview. And we will also need two more data elements to store the boolean values of true and false. So that will be true data element, which will store the true value, and false data element, which will store the false value. And you can see they are getting added. You can also see in the data element review. Let's go to the flow. Here we will check on the account exists data element. So let's select the account exists. So if account exists, which is a boolean value, as you can see, it is a return value from the IDN account exists by display name method. So it will return either true or false. So if account exists is true, then it is not a unique username. So then in that case, we have to return false, and that will be a return statement. So as you can see, the if block here, if account exists is true, then we need to return false because we are returning false for the is unique username. Else, return true, and check this box so that the return statement is added. And our custom function, let's add it to the main rule. And you can see in the rule preview, the custom function has been added. Now we will add the data elements in our main rule. So as discussed earlier, the data elements we need are the first name of the identity, which is a string, and this is an identity attribute. So select the first name, and we can apply a function trim. If there are any spaces, it will trim it. Similarly, we'll retrieve the last name on the identity. And again apply the trim function over it. And then we will define a username. We will initialize it to a null value. And then we will need a counter variable, which is a number, and it is a constant. Let's initialize it to 0. We will also need a max iteration. The max we will set to as 100. So until 100 times going to repeat in the loop the steps to generate a unique username. So it generates the username and then go and checks for the uniqueness until it finds a unique name for the account. Let's add this one also. And for the looping purpose and also for generating the username in the application, if the username exists, then we need to append it with a numeric value. So for those purposes, we will create two other counter variables, and we'll call as, this will be an incrementer. So let's call it as counter incrementer. And this will be on the already added data element counter, and we are going to increment by 1. And we will also need a decrementer to check the initial value. So the initial value is counter is 0, and then the second time when we come back into the loop, so we will add first name dot last name 0. That will be a counter decrementer. This is also a number. This will be an added data element and on the counter, but we are decrementing this time. And we will also need a custom function call. So we need, in the main rule, we will call the isUnique function. So let's store the result of that custom function call. Let's call it as isUnique username, and the result is a Boolean data type because the function isUnique is returning a Boolean. We need to store it in a Boolean data type data element. And here we'll select the custom function call, and our function is appearing here, and the parameter we will pass as the username. So select data element and select username. So this is how we are preparing our data elements. Click add to it. So all our data elements we have prepared, as you can see. Now let's save it so that they get added into the main rule. Next we will add the flow into our main rule, which is the logic. So let's start with the if block. We'll check if first name is not null, and so select that condition, and is the default, but we also have an or, and last name is also not null. And within our if, so if both are not null, Then in the body, we will add a while loop. So there are add logic block and then select while loop. So our condition on the while loop, as long as our counter is less than the max iteration, we will loop through until we find a is unique value for the username. So in the while loop body, we will add a switch case statement. So that will be in the logic block. Let's add switch case. So the first time, and here we are checking the counter value. So the first time, as we have initialized counter to 0, so we should have one entry for the case value of 0. In that case, if it is 0, that's the first time, the initial value. Then we'll select the data element as username. And this username we will assign to the first name and last name. So that we have already. So for that, we have to create one more data element. So let's go back. So this flow will be saved as you are seeing here in the rule preview. So we will add the data element to make up the username. So we will call it as username 1. And this will be a concatenation, a combination of first name and last name. So this is the first name and we will concatenate with a dot and then the last name. So if we scroll down, we have add to concatenation, which will show that these two elements will be added to the first name. And then we will add the data element. So which will show up in our data element preview. We will also add one more data element to be used for the if there is an account with this username already existing, then we need to generate a username with first name dot last name and then the counter. So and then a numeric value. So we will also make up that data element to be used in our switch case statement. And we will call this as username 2. And this will be a string. And add a data element because we are using the already existing data element, which is our username 1. Our username 1 is having first name dot last name. And then we will add our function as concatenate. And to this, we will be adding the iteration counter, which is a decrementer. So we will add the decrementer counter variable. So in that case, in the first time in the while loop, our counter is 0 and it will check for the 0 value in the switch case. The second time the counter gets incremented by 1 and then it gets into the loop, and then it will go to the next part of the switch case, which I will explain now. Save and close. Let's go to the flow. So we already have the flow which we have put in. We have the if both the first name and last name are not null, and then we have configured the while block, which is checking for counter is less than max iteration, and in that we are adding the switch. So in switch we are checking for case is 0, that means the initial value of the counter, it is 0 the first time. So the first time we are generating a username based on the first name and last name, just those two. So first name dot last name. So let's select. So we are going to assign a value for this username, not the assignment. So here This will be our username 1 where we added first name dot last name. So if you scroll here, so here is our switch, here is our while. We will also see our if first name not equal to null and last name not equal to null, while counter is less than max iteration. So we are in the loop and we are checking for the value. So our initialized value for the counter is 0. The first time it is making up the username as first name dot last name. We also need to add a break statement for this. So just click the break here. So it will make up the username and come out of the switch case. And also we need to handle the other case where our counter is an incremented because the username is already existing in application, so we will be incrementing our counter and coming back into the while loop. So to handle that, we have to add the default case statements. So in that, we will make up our username as username will be first name dot last name. Along with that, we will add the numeric value as a decrementer of our counter. So this time the counter, if it is 1, then we will add first name dot last name 0. So that will be our account name or the username we are going to check in the application. So here we will select our next username too. So this is the concatenated version. So as you can see, username 1, which is our first name dot last name, and the counter decrementer. So whatever is the value of the counter at that time, so it will decrement by 1 and then add it to basically appends to the first name dot last name, and then it will break out of the switch case. And after that, so once we make up the username, we are going to check for the uniqueness of the username. So after this, we will add another if condition, and we will check here if is unique username, then in the body we'll just break out of it. That means we found a unique username, so we don't need to proceed further in the loop, so we can come out of our while loop. So include the break statement there. If it is not unique, then we have to go back into the loop, but after incrementing our counter. So that will be here, and let's select our counter, and this will be an assignment, and we'll assign our counter to the incrementer. As you can see here, you can always check. So after we check for the uniqueness, if the username is unique, we'll break out of the while loop and we'll come out of it, come out of the while loop, and then we can return. So we will adjust this variable in the final flow, and we will return the username. Now if we don't find the unique username, then we will increment the counter by 1, and then we'll go back into the while loop. Okay, so that's how we have configured our while loop. Now we can, we need to correct this return statement. So for that, go to the next tab, which is the final value, and here we can select the data element. So the data element we are interested is the username, because that is the one which is getting the latest username, and we are going to return the username. Now we can save the rule. We can also download as an XML. So let's download the XML file. So it has been downloaded, and then save the rule. Rule has been saved. You will also see this rule in the rule dashboard. which is here. And let's check our downloads. And let me click this, the edit with notepad. So here we will see our rule which has been generated. So we have all the data elements, and we have our if block where we are checking for the first name, last name, and then we have the while switch case, and then we have the if, and again the counter where we are incrementing. We also have our custom function which we have used to support our main rule.